25 Minecraft things that work but shouldn't. In Minecraft, even the craziest of ideas can work out, which means you're bound to see some weird sights. And that's what we'll see today. And according to YouTube, it's impossible to subscribe to the channel before this steak smelts in the furnace. So to prove them wrong, click that red sub button below. It's free and it helps out a ton. Number 1. Elytras are a great asset to have, but having to beat the dragon before you get one could be something of a hassle. So if you found the end portal and want to jump to the good stuff, all you need is a piston to make it work. As Mysticat shows, pushing yourself with a piston underneath the portal is enough to teleport us to the relative coordinates in the end. So if you got a slow falling potion and a handful of ender pearls, we can quite literally find the end city loot before even attempting the dragon fight. Number 2. When you think of space travel, you're probably picturing something like this, but it turns out a boat can work just as well. Let me explain. See, on Bedrock, if you were to put a boat on top of a pad of slime blocks, bounce on top of it a couple of times, and then get in, then we can ride that sucker sky high. And if you ask me, that's definitely the weirdest and the cheapest way to reach the stratosphere. So if you're tired of building the traditional elevator or ladder, then this will definitely offer some new leverage. Number 3. Even though Minecraft is a sandbox game, there are certain rules we're not supposed to break, like placing blocks above a certain height. I mean, why else would it be called the build limit? But that doesn't explain why this site works like so. See, by using a method the community's found for mixing falling sand entities with invisible shulkers, we can essentially make our own builds both above and below the world limit, which can result in some pretty wild sights for sure. So if you're looking for a project in creative, it's a fun tool to use. Number 4. Dragon's Breath is a tough item to get, and that's in no small part thanks to the fact that you need to fight a dragon to get it. But if you want some lingering potions and tipped arrows, then it's a necessity. So if you want to get your supply as quickly as possible, this might speed up the process. See, instead of filling our bottles from the magic on the floor, we can just take as much as we want from the dragon's head. And while it's a glitch, it is nice to have our stuff bottled at the source. Number 5. Keeping monsters away from your base is a big problem to solve. And while there are simple solutions, like constructing a big wall of blocks, those aren't always the prettiest. So thankfully, these azalea bushes do the trick just the same. No joke, in the current versions, it's possible to place down a ring of these bushes, and that alone will stop the monsters from getting any closer, which is ridiculous for sure, but it's hard to criticize something that works this easily. And hey, it'll give you an early start in building a hedge maze, for what that's worth. Number 6. Keeping your items safe and tucked away is a complex problem, and while an ender chest is often the solution, this doesn't seem too shabby either. As it turns out, this seed generated a buried treasure chest in such a way that it's encased in a thing of bedrock around all sides. And not only does this generate bedrock in a way that it's not supposed to, but it also gives a pretty solid defense to your valuables. That is, if you could even get inside. And honestly, for the amount of effort it takes to break in, you'd wish that the treasure inside was more worthwhile. Number 7. If you've ever named an item in an anvil, you're aware that any custom name is bound to end up in italics. But strange as it may seem, Bedrock has a way to avoid that. See, over here, we can use the Unicode symbol like so to keep our text upright. And the results not only look nice, but they open up a world of possibilities for pranking your friends, which might just be your cue to give them an enchanted stone pickaxe, name it as a netherite one, and then see how long it takes for them to notice. Number 8. String isn't usually the most fun item to farm, and if you're like me, you'll try to find any way to do this without having to deal with spiders. But once you've broken all the cobwebs nearby, then maybe try this backup instead. See, in 1.18, there's a glitch that causes string placed like so as a tripwire to duplicate when it's broken by water, which I'll fully admit is weird. But the bigger question on my mind is what kind of scenario leads to someone figuring this out anyway? But regardless of how we came to know this, it does work, if you ever need it. Number 9. Bridges are a staple of Minecraft building, but while we usually build these out of blocks, or maybe campfires, I doubt arrows are your first pick. Though as this user shows off, that might be our mistake. Sure enough, in certain versions, it's possible to hit yourself with a punch 2 arrow as it's falling to score some extra knockback. And while we'll lose some height in the process, this does work well enough to cross a gap that's dozens of blocks wide. And if you're ever being chased by someone in a manhunt, that might be all the space you need. Number 10. Stratters don't like to be cold, and that raises an unfortunate problem for us, since if we want them to be happy, we need to incorporate some kind of fire hazard into our builds, and that's not ideal, to say the least. But go figure, moss carpet is the proper solution. Since this carpet doesn't burn, we can use it as a protective layer for our lava, and the stratters will be happy and warm just the same, which I'll say makes it a lot less stressful to mount one of these, and gives us quite the pleasant compromise. Number 11. Spawning into a new world should be a positive experience. After all, it's the start of something fresh and exciting, so that's gotta count for something. But in this case, it's more of a rude awakening than a clean start, since on this seed, we just so happen to spawn right on top of a cactus of all places. And I don't think I'm out of line by calling that a bad spawn. So if you want to start out your world with a depleted health bar and a bad attitude, I guess this does the trick, for whatever that's worth. Number 12. When you're on multiplayer, it's nice to offer some starting gear to the new players. But how do you guarantee that that stuff only goes to those who need it, instead of the rich players who are looking for free handouts? Well, odd as it may seem, this book could do the trick. As RaiseWorks demonstrates, having a book written like so can overload the data and cause a player with too many items in their inventory to get kicked out when they open up the chest. But if you have nothing, it works as planned. and though I barely understand the science behind it, it is a cool system. Number 13. As far as Minecraft minigames go, Spleef is a classic. And while it's perfectly functional to play this using a shovel or even eggs, what's really worth trying is using a crossbow. Though not to shoot the other players, but rather the drip leaf plants beneath them. See, when these are shot, they'll open up a gap into the floor. And moreover, we could add on enchantments like multi-shot and get ourselves a fun twist on the standard setup. And if you ask me, that's worth trying, even if it'll take some time to build the arena. Number 14. Snow golems make for great friends, but they are the best protectors. And really, unless they're attacking blazes, these snowballs are not good for much. Though if we take some blocks from the nether, we can effectively turn that around. See, in Bedrock Edition, these snowball entities work fairly different, letting them even catch on fire when thrown like so. And that can let us turn our snow golem pals into vicious flamethrowers. If you ask me, that's a welcome improvement. So if you make sure no mobs can jump in and kill them, this might be the best way to defend your base. Number 15. Leads definitely serve their purpose, but while they're good for guiding mobs, they aren't as much for decoration, though a bucket is all we need to flip that switch. See, if you were to place an axolotl next to a fence post, tie the two together with a lead, and then pick up the axolotl again in the water bucket, the lead will still be knotted to the pole, which is bizarre, but it'll let us get that extra detail from Minecraft building. And if you ask me, that's a lot easier than having an invisible rabbit nearby. Number 16. Hiding an entrance in your base is no easy task, because how do you balance something that's practical to use, but also keeps out the intruders? Well, if you take after this Reddit user, we might just have our answer. See, while tridents are great for launches around the skies, they can also let us enter the crawling animation without a trapdoor. And with that, we can essentially create a one-by-one entrance to a hidden room. Then, after covering the wall with some kind of custom map art, we can slide past the item frame and into your lair with ease. Number 17. If you've ever visited the Creative Mode's Redstone tab, you're aware that Minecraft has a few buttons to choose from. But while you're likely picturing something like this, what if I told you that these pressure plates could be pressed the same way? Here's an example. See, if we were to take a firework rocket and right-click it to place it on the pressure plate, then the entity will temporarily give off a pulse. And as such, we can trigger these plates from afar. And while the practicality is questionable, I'm sure your redstone experts can find a proper use for it. Number 18. Campfires can be a useful decoration to have in your world. But by this point, everyone's already familiar with these things. So to step outside of the box, these armor stands are a sneaky solution. See, when placed in lava, these things burn pretty bright, letting us use a piston to add in our block of choice and successfully create a new illusion. And honestly, I'm surprised it works as well as it does. But it just goes to show that there's a couple more options out there than just using yet another flint and steel and a block of netherrack. Number 19. Minecraft's fluid dynamics don't make a lot of sense, and nowhere is that more apparent than when it comes to farmland. See, the way it's coded is that water will hydrate any farmland within a 9x9 grid like so, but that works regardless of what block is in between them, meaning that your crops can hydrate even through thin air. And if you ask me, that's just absurd. But sure enough, it does work. So if you're looking to make a farm on your skyblock, I guess this is something to consider. But other than that, it just seems pointless. Number 20. I don't think I'm breaking any new ground by calling axolotls adorable, because just look at them. But with all that cuteness, they're not very fast. Though that can all change with the help of a lead. Strangely enough, if you tie up an axolotl like so, it'll start to move around at some breakneck speeds. And this works both on land or in the ocean domain. So if you're looking to get your pet some exercise outside of the bucket, it seems like a decent workout. Though just keep in mind, it's tough to take it off the leash once it's on. Number 21. Now, the laws of gravity don't exactly apply in Minecraft. I mean, clearly. But what's stranger than that is when Minecraft isn't even consistent on its own terms. For instance, gravel falls when there's nothing beneath it. And similarly, a lantern can only be placed with something solid above or below it. So then why does this work? Sure, the gravel is supported by the lantern, but the lantern's supported by the gravel just the same. And if you break either one, the whole thing falls apart, giving us all perhaps the most literal definition of a symbiotic relationship. Number 22. Even though they count as cheating, duplication glitches are a lot of fun. If anything, it's just interesting to see how the community keeps discovering cracks in Minecraft's code. And that's just the case over on Bedrock Edition. See, after getting yourself the set of armor that you want and then applying thorns 3 to each piece, then we can build a setup like so with our trapdoor. Then shoot 8 harming arrows into the space on the gate and flip it open so that you subsequently die, which from there you can pick up your stuff and a bunch of copies of your gear along with it. Number 23. Fall damage is one of the most common ways to die in Minecraft, so we're often looking for ways to avoid it. But while that's usually done through the help of water buckets, it turns out that powdered snow might be the best option. And a big reason for that is this glitch where we can land on a carpet on top of powdered snow blocks and not take any fall damage, even though it's covered, letting us not only create virtually invisible landing pads, but also build them in the nether. And that's a lot more robust than the water that we're used to. Number 24. If you've ever filled out the end portal, you're probably familiar with how this story goes. You place in the Eyes of Ender, brace yourself, and then jump in for the fight. Only this time, we're still standing on top, which is pretty weird, but it turns out that on Bedrock, it's possible to stand in the portal without teleporting. All we need to do is place a set of fences underneath like so, and we can essentially make it off limits. Or at least it's off limits until someone breaks that wooden fence, which is a small hurdle to cross. Number 25. What if I told you we can place lava underwater? Well, that probably sounds ridiculous. ridiculous. But it turns out that there's a way to do this without getting obsidian. See, with the way the cauldrons are coated, we can push one of these into the river, fill it with lava, and then it'll work just the same. So if you've ever wanted to burn alive at the bottom of the ocean, I guess there's a way to do that. But at least we don't light on fire while we're doing it, for whatever that's worth. And with that, folks, have a good one, alright?